Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Greg Allison with Green Greg's Garden and Worm Farm. And I'm here tonight with David DuByne. Very honored to have you as a guest on my show tonight.
And just like we did up at LeakCon, with Craig Simpson up there, did an interview with you, and we, some good talk about what you, especially with these farming techniques to create protein for different animals to eat, especially with the worm farms, and not for us to eat per se, but things moving forward for smaller animals or other types of farm animals that then could in turn eat that protein source that you're growing. And I like the way your mind's working, thinking for us for the future, for a smaller environment that you can control, have more control over under your home or in your own small land space versus be reliant on a just-in-time delivery system or some kind of corporate delivery system.
That's
taking the food sovereignty back.
That's not sustainable, especially with things coming at us. So, and to kind of get into that, David, it's a very interesting story as to what got you into doing your channel Adapt 2030. Now, some of my viewers are not familiar with you. Quite a few are, but for those that are not, David, if you could explain what it was that led you to develop this channel and put out the message you're putting out, and basically what that message is in a nutshell.
30-second elevator pitch. I used to buy coffee down in Myanmar in the Shan State, central Myanmar. I used to buy Arabica coffee, and when we were down there, we were told by the coffee farmers that it was the third year in a row that they'd experienced cold weather damage to the plants. So they would have to overplant new plantings out in the field, and then the yields were becoming a little bit lower each year successively. And the density of the bean was compromised a little bit because water pockets would freeze in the bean, and then when it thawed, it left that space that would never be refilled. That was my first introduction into it, and I was wondering why it was getting cold in Myanmar. And once I found out that this is a cycle, it's not the first time it's happened, I started to look into it and say, you know what, this cycle's here again. And whoa, well, this is something we should be talking about as a global community, where the food's going to come from. Our planting seasons are shrinking, and we're all in this together. We all eat every day, and everything's so just in time. And the crops where we've established them over the last 150 years is starting to move now, and it's starting to not be as reliable as it used to be. So we should be talking about replacement crops or different opportunities for, taking some different foods that really weren't established as a commercial crop before, and just, trying to revamp our agricultural system a little bit. But it's been moot point so far. Nobody's really talking about it. And I thought I'd bring it to the forefront here to start these conversations about how we are going to start to have to really have conversations about where we're growing food and why the crop losses are happening so frequently now. And moving forward the next couple of years, what you can expect with food pricing and how that in turn would bend the economy. So I wrapped that whole channel into those few different points because it's all intertwined in our modern society.
Well, as an engineer, I have come, especially one who's been interested in futurism, space development in the past, and also having had a background growing up on a farm and kind of a survivalist bent that I've had. I was already a natural prepper, but I became increasingly aware of the fragility of our society. And so I had moved more and more into a prepping mode. And, we've had some certain instabilities where I work at. So I basically asked myself, what can I do on my own 2 feet, on my own 2 acres, to make a living on my place, to be able to support myself right here, to grow my own food and make a living doing it. And I've discovered I've really got far more than I need, because I've done an interview with a family in Pasadena, California, who accomplishes that initially for a family of 4 adults on 1/10 of an acre in their backyard. Now we have 42 to 47 million acres of lawns in America, depending on how you count it. That's enough to support a couple billion people if you farm like that. So this whole lot, I'm skeptical of all these ideas that we have too many people. It's a matter of how we live and how we conduct our society. And so I've been interested in trying to promote new and better ways to do that. But I've also been aware of these climatic and other threats that are in front of us, and I've become increasingly aware of them as I've moved forward. You might know, I don't know if you know, but John Christie, who does the UAH satellite data, is right here in my backyard. I've been president quite a few number of years of the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society, a space society. I've had him speak at our conferences, and in fact, I had been kind of a global warming skeptic and had fallen into believing in it because it seemed to be getting warmer in Alaska, and I didn't understand what that meant. I had lived there for a couple of years, by the way. And John Christie put it all in perspective for me. He taught me back into understanding how things really are, and he taught me out of believing in that perspective. So I've been open-minded. I've been able to shift sides according to the best evidence in front of me. And some people say, "Oh, Greg, that's not scientific." Yeah, yes, it is scientific. John Christie and Roy Spencer, these guys are scientists, excellent scientists. And in fact, every climatologist I know is on that side. The ones I know. Now, there's obviously others out there, but a lot of them are also on the corporate take for the Uncle Sugar money. So there is a lot of parochialism in the system. So you've got to be able to see through that. That said, there's a lot of information that is being screened that people aren't getting through the mainstream news media that is available from social media and other sources. And one of the things you brought out recently was this ice hurricane that hit Iceland. That and things like huge snowstorms in Baghdad and places. People always hear every time it's warm somewhere, but they don't hear at all about these cold occurrences. This is a stunning thing. What do you think about that?
Well, I think, if you've ever spent any time on an airplane and looked out the window instead of the video screen in front of you, you'll understand how vast this earth really is. And it's not really an overpopulation problem. It's a distribution problem. It's a resource allocation problem. It's not a population problem.
No.
And the narratives being pushed, whether it's overpopulation or whether it's climate change or whatever narrative it is, you need to cut back and live in a 2 square meter home, and you can only use candlelight to live by, and you have to, all these things they want you to do, and you can only eat insects. And this whole narrative push goes right exactly what you're saying here. They only want you to see what they want you to see. When you have the largest snowstorm ever recorded in Icelandic history come in and bury the place, in some places up to 18 feet of snow. Average snow drift at that time was 5 feet on the dump. And, that didn't make very much news. Now, did it? And these stores over in Baghdad, the storms, they hadn't had those type of snowstorms in 100 plus years, 120 years. So it was the last time it snowed down there in such deep depths. Now we have these record snows in Iran. And I've been trying to cover this because not only was it in Iran, but they had the ice storms all through Syria. The once in 100 or 120 year snowstorm in Baghdad, depending on which dates you're counting on the official, when the British were there back in the late 1880s, 1890s. And, we're seeing things that we just don't normally see. The snowfalls in United Arab Emirates and that record snowfall. You're talking about record snow in Yemen and Oman. Like these kind of places just don't get record snow in Oman. I mean, when's the last time you heard that? Sure didn't make the Guardian front page, but 1 degree over something, and it's a existential threat. But hey, buy more automobiles. They're so worried about the supply chain disruptions in China, but here the existential threat, but buy more stuff, right? It's like speak out of this side, but do something different on that side.
Yeah, and their solutions for all these problems they talk about aren't real solutions, in my opinion. Real solutions, which we should do for other reasons, which would cover the kind of things they're talking about, would be buying from local growers, making our society more resilient, which we can do that. And we can produce the food locally. We can do more with local resources, local networks, and smaller farmers. But they want to go the other direction with larger corporate systems and more control. So they're really pushing a control agenda, not an agenda that serves the environment as best as I can tell. And,
because you think everybody would be taught that in school, as much as they're trying to bring up global warming classes and all this stuff, you'd think they would have 101 farming classes, fruit orchard classes, grow vegetables in your backyard classes, victory garden classes, but they don't because they want you on the corporate system. You can only get your food from a supermarket.
That's where it grows, right?
Could be dirty if you grow it yourself. There might actually be dirt on your food if you grow it yourself. You can only get it clean from the supermarket. And that is the message that shocks me.
Yeah, all that chemically contaminated, false, fake food they want to push upon us. Frankenfood. And, they now have certain people buying out what's supposed to be in the organic food restaurants, or excuse me, the grocery stores, and they're putting organic labels on Del Monte, things like that that get sprayed with everything you can imagine. So
yeah, Earth Fare is one that went out of business around where we live. Earth Fare is a sort of a semi-organic kind of health food, but they seem to be getting a little overpriced, where somebody like you talk, these big box chains are now offering organic. So if you're going to go to a bigger box store and it's offered organic, or you're going to go to somewhere like Earth Fare that's predominantly higher priced, they were getting the same competition from exactly what you're talking about.
Earth Fare's
big name companies coming in with organics now.
Earth Fare's going out of business here too. And so what you've got is what Whole Foods bought out by Amazon, by Mr. Bezos, who says he will deliver it to your home soon, probably with his little drone aircraft. So you don't even have to go buy it. You'll just get it. It's going to be organic. It'll be cheap, but it's going to be factory grown and highly distributed, and you have no idea what you get. Anyway, so I still say the best way to do it is to buy it local from somebody that you know how they grow it. All the certifications are really meaningless. It's better if you just know the farmer and know what they do and know what you're buying that way. That's how you get the best, most highly nutritious food. The most highly nutritious food is the food that the farmer cares about growing in wood chips and leaf litter, worm castings, putting rock dust in it so it has the minerals, the probiotics to make the stuff grow, not just put NPK fertilizers. NPK doesn't have the micronutrients that you need, that your body requires to maintain top-notch immunity. And we're in a day and age now where the immunity is very important. Oh, by the way, you also, like myself, promote the growing of microgreens. And it just so happens that microgreens are about 40 times more nutritious than full-size vegetables. A lot of people aren't aware of that. So there's a lot of advantage, especially if we come into quarantine, of growing your own greens in your home, stuff that you can grow year-round. So for people watching my channel, you can check the links below my channel. I do have links to True Leaf Market. David on his channel has the same thing. Also, I have a preparewithgreg.com for links to my Patriot Supply. So if you go to Prepare with Greg, you can get special discounts for 2 and 4 week supplies of long-term food. For 4 weeks, it's $100 off. It's roughly $70 off for the 2 week supply. Good special deals, and you better get it while the shipping's still going on, while the system is still working. And what we're about to talk about is going to just show you why food prices are expected to really skyrocket, and availability will be an issue. So with that, David, what do you think about the global supply chain breaking down? And we'll talk about how that's going to affect the food supply.
Well, being also an affiliate there with My Patriot Supply, did you see the email they sent to us that said they're buying 5 times as much right now to their wholesale suppliers to try to bring in, because they're getting such voluminous orders? He's like, I've never seen anything like this before. The 2-day shipping, they're trying to still continue it, but with the backdating and all these orders coming through, this is one of the only companies left that even has stock, because these smaller companies, institutional buyers, have been going through and buying out every last kilogram of available foods that have been freeze-dried or in the the Mylar bags and all this type of longer term where you can store it for a longer period of time. So what's going on where they have institutional buyers paying cash, bringing their own trucks in, loading themselves, and then taking everything out? I mean, that should be a huge check mark right there. Where's
it going, David?
Where's it going? Where's it going? Now, just on the when you talk about microgreens, if you have your own seeds in your house, and I'm talking beans that you can go buy 5-pound bag of beans at the store, you can in turn those into microgreens too. You don't have to just have radish seeds or something. Black-eyed peas are an amazing microgreen. When they get about that, a good couple, 2-3 inches tall, they're real supple. They snap. They taste pretty much like sunflower shoots, if you will. Same kind of crispiness, thick stems on them, really juicy, hold water really well. And not only would you have your seed supply there, but it's also what you call beans that you would eat. And you can do all this in your home. So taking your own food sovereignty, so if you're storing something for a longer period of time as part of your prep,
I would say
your seed supply too at the same time. So you got like 2 birds, 1 stone. You got both areas covered. So you can have microgreens in as quickly as 7 days. And if you need to store those seeds, you can keep those for years. So whatever way, it's just a great thing to think about moving forward. Our world's changing so fast right now with these supply chain issues.
I would say that people also should consider setting aside some containers to grow plants in, just for the purpose of having seed. Don't harvest anything else from them but seed. Let them go to seed. And you can do a lot in container gardens, on in a windowsill, on a stoop, deck, whatever space you got that's got a little sunlight, or you can put it in a closet and have artificial lights. Just find some place you can grow container garden, or just some plants in containers. You'll be surprised what you can grow and how many seeds a single plant puts out. For microgreens, you need a lot of seeds, but plants do provide a lot of seeds. And so you could and it doesn't take but a couple seeds for a plant. So you just save a little bit back, replant it, and my gosh, you can harvest your seeds, keep it going. But you got to have heirloom seeds to do this. So get good source of seeds that are heirloom seeds. And that's one thing that True Leaf Market does carry, is heirloom seeds. Are good with it. There's some other companies that do too. Just make sure that you're getting heirloom seeds when you do that. So let's talk about the supply chain. So things, well, I tell you what, let's take it a little higher. Let's talk about root source problems. David, you just came back from Taipei, Taiwan, on the island of Formosa. You have lived in China. I'm sure you have a lot of good, solid, steady, current contacts in China. And you've been seeing and hearing all things. What is going on there, David?
Yeah, it's a good question. And a lot of people have that. And I don't mean like it's a good question, like a good question for an interview question. I mean, just literally, that is the question everybody needs to be asking, but they're not, because they're too afraid of being labeled as a xenophobe or whatever it might be. People need to be really asking these questions. What's going on there? Because what we're seeing in the video.
Yeah,
everybody's afraid to ask. Why are they afraid to ask a simple question? Like, with these videos that are coming out are so off the hook, well over barbaric of what needs to be done for people who aren't wearing masks or whatever. Okay. Well, when you're watching people get run over by bulldozers and front end loaders because they're not wearing masks, and they're being run over on the streets, and the backhoe comes and slams them down into the pavement and things, like, something's very wrong. I think it's a 2.0 political purge, just like the Cultural Revolution. That's my own personal opinion. You can agree or disagree with that, but what I know about the history of China, living there, and I was very fascinated by the Cultural Revolution, why nobody stood up and why nobody fought back. Because I was thinking, back in the day, you had all the shock troops of the students and all these things rounding people up, and I was like, why didn't neighborhoods get together and fight back if they knew they were going to get arrested? But we're looking at the exact same thing happening today. You got the neighborhood spies. You got part of the people indoctrinated that if they help the party, then they'll be rewarded somehow. So nobody's coming together to try to resist anything. And I swear, I'm looking, all my questions have been answered as to why aren't people fighting back? I mean, those people that are getting arrested are like by themselves, and they're starting to resist and go, ooh, I'm going to get thrown into either a prison camp, a guillotine camp, or some kind of quarantine thing there. But they're on their own. So you see all these other people standing around instead of helping their neighbors. It's only 2 or 3 police there, and there's like 50 people standing around. You think that they would say, whoa, enough police, but they don't. And
stories about Nazi Germany, they say when it came from the Jews, I didn't do anything because that was just them. When it came from the Catholics, I didn't do anything because that was just them. When it came from this group or that group, and then finally when they said when it came from me, there was nobody here to help me. So
similar, but I'll throw a wild card out there. A lot of people don't know this. This is one thing. Even today, unless you lived in China, you probably wouldn't get this news. The Hong Kong protests took precedent over the last year, and you kept hearing about Hong Kong again and again. But did you know the number 2 largest protest in China over the entire year was Wuhan? Because they were going to put trash burning power plants up there in July of 2019. So the entire city mobilized. There were millions of protesters out on the streets for weeks up there, and made the army back down, made the CCP back down, and then they stopped the projects from moving forward, the trash burning power plants.
Interesting.
Now, what I know for sure, and I can tell you as 100% fact, is a lot of these videos that you're seeing people where they're dragging people out of their homes, and they're like, wait, I'm in my house, like I'm wearing a mask in my house, and they still drag them out. Those were the organizers of the protests that were doing things online to get people, community organizations, to go out and do the protest. So I know for a fact that part of these roundups is for what had happened politically of those people who were online and actually getting into the organizational structure of that whole protest moving through. So you can see already if the verified organizers of that were being arrested, there were 6 of them that have been identified as, hey, those are the ones who were organized. If they're getting pulled out of their homes, it's a political purge at the same time under the guise of quarantine. Now, I'm sure they're trying their best to try to really lock the virus down. That's fine. But on the other end, they're also using it for nefarious reasons, saying, hey, we're taking them to quarantine, but they're never seen from again. The citizen journalists that they're all rounded up. They're never seen from. Nobody knows where they are. No family contacts. They just kind of disappeared. Where? We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people disappearing. Where'd they go? Journalists, online personalities, anybody who ever spoke out against the government, especially in Wuhan, they're just finding them now with the hey, I know that person, and they'll have their picture, and then they'll show them that they were the ones who had organized the protest, and they're like, well, that was the person who got pulled out of their house. So now there's this whole thing where once they see somebody get yanked out of their house, what they try to do is see if they can backtrack in and find a face or somebody who knows who that was, and if they were organized in any way, shape, or form for the Wuhan protests, at least in Wuhan. But anybody who's ever spoken out against the CCP too online that might have agreed with them, like, yeah, they can't put a trash burning power plant and create cancer in our cities. How dare they do that? Well, any of that online dissent or anything has been cataloged through the AI system over the last few years in conjunction with the social credit score. So now it's chickens are coming home to roost. They're rooting everybody out who ever spoke out against the government ever. They're on a list. The AI targets them. They put the name, the address, and the police just keep going to house after house after house after house right now. And nobody's asking why. What's happening over there?
Well, who is it here in America that says never let a good catastrophe go to waste? Who was it used to say that? It was a guy who became mayor of Chicago. I'm getting brain locked. You probably know who I'm
Was that Capone or no?
Oh, no. More recently, became mayor of Chicago. He was in early on in the Obama administration, the very first couple of years. He became mayor of Sean Hannity calls him Fishbone or something like that. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. He used to say, never let a good catastrophe go to waste. So, there are people that take opportunity of times like that. They see them as times of opportunity to advance their own agenda, whatever it may be. So, in the old days, a mousy tongue, it was nothing for him to off 80 million of his own people, as he's been accused of doing, because he had tight control in his country and everybody knew what kind of country it was and he could pull it off. But today, China is trying to trade in the world of world opinion. And so if they want to do something nefarious, they need cover for it. Now, I don't know if they're just taking advantage of something that just happened to happen, something somebody else started. I have no idea. But as you pointed out, something odd is happening there. So, and that's a tragedy. In any way you want to look at it, it's a tragedy. So it's my hope that the people of China can see what's going on and take their liberty and freedom back. But it's going to be a real challenge the way it's going down. So,
well, let me interject there for Greg for a second here. Now, the way you just said that, you and I would think that, where they would take their liberty and freedom back, but they've never had it. They never know they lost it. So the way they've been indoctrinated for the last 3 generations is it's never there, never has been there, never will be there. So how it doesn't, it's not even on the radar of being there to get it taken back.
Yeah, they don't know what it is.
I mean, there are a few, don't get me wrong, people who've gone overseas and, but it's a fraction of a percentage only. Where over here in the U.S. is completely the opposite. If they were to try to do that, it would be 99.9% the opposite of going, we're going to lose that. They never knew they even had it. So living there and watching that progress too, when I was doing business and, meeting people and, going to university over there and all these things that were happening, even the foreign students that come over to the U.S. to study, when they see, the Wikipedia, and I'm not a fan of Wikipedia, but any of these kind of information sites where they talk about the Cultural Revolution and all these things that had happened in Tiananmen Square, they're like, I don't want to see it. No, you guys are lying. You made all that stuff up.
Yeah,
no, that's really the way it is, so you got these foreign students come over and they're young, open minds, And they still don't believe it. They think everything that is negatively talked about China in any way, shape, or form that ever criticized the government since the 1950s up to today is a complete fabrication, and it's all done on purpose to make China look bad. So they don't even want to look at it.
Well, that's what they're told. That's how they're indoctrinated. And there's levels of indoctrination all over the world in different ways and forms. We all are subject to it to some degree. That's why we have to think for ourselves as much as we can. And that's a challenge these days because we're spoon-fed in the same stuff constantly through the media. But thanks to social media, there's an opportunity to get alternative thoughts out, patterns, to show pictures of things. But there are those that don't like that, will like to shut it down. So in any event, moving forward, what does this mean? So China has got, I hear, like 760 million people under quarantine. The factories have been shut down now since, through over a month. We're going into a month and a half of factory shutdowns. This can be good. You got shipping shut down. You have shipping crates that aren't moving. Even if they decided tomorrow morning that they were going to crank it all back up, that would take time. There's a lot of stuff that's just not in place. Everything don't happen instantly, and it's not happening tomorrow morning. So this could be weeks or months. It could be several months of just a lack of supplies out there in the world due to what's happening in China alone. This can impact parts that are moving to other factories in other parts of the world. It could cause supply chain disruption, things not being produced, and it could affect our manufacturing, our food supply, and our power grid. But moreover, what happens when these quarantines come here? So what do you think about the economic situation with China, and how do you see that transposing here to the United States and the rest of the West? The rest of the world.
Yeah, I was reading a couple of reports just over the last few days because Zero Hedge is kind of one of my favorite sites. I like to go there and take a look at the financial news for sure. UBS came out with their own, synopsis of what you're talking about, and then Goldman Sachs came out with their own synopsis out of Hong Kong as well. But both of them arrived at the exact same conclusion, just like you did. It's not going to be weeks until things could ramp back up. It's going to be months. It's in plural. And UBS was saying 4 months, and Goldman was saying 7.
Wow.
So,
well, that's if they start now.
Yeah, that's really far out, because the disruptions on that, what they kept talking about was the bond defaults, or the bond defaults inside the small and medium-sized enterprises, not the state-owned enterprises. Those are two different animals over there. The state-run are fully injected, every single day, and they're never allowed to fail. And it's always a state-owned companies, literally Chinese government companies. But then the ones that you or I could own, we started something, 30 years ago when China was opening up, and we become like a mid-sized multi-million-dollar cap company. Well, that's not inside the banking system now, and that's not covered by the shadow banking either. So they lost both avenues for any kind of bailouts. And China's government doesn't appear right now to be helping them at all. And these are the ones that are predominantly doing a lot of the mid-level manufacturing of these same supply chains you're talking about, that are getting into a container, coming over to a Walmart. They're a random factory out somewhere that has a contract, and and you or I, maybe we had a procurement or a sourcing company in America, and we went over there, and we're the ones who are actually using that small, medium enterprise factory to do our manufacturing, and then we bring it back with our own containers, and we do our own logistics, and we get it back in through a contract because Walmart doesn't do any of their own stuff. They sub everything out, because I worked for a couple guys doing quality control that had NCAA, authorization to do team sports types of things. And it was all very clean, and it was good. So everything that's available that you would find in a Walmart is coming from literally somebody like you and myself with our own companies that are then using a third-party manufacturer that's doing everything over in China. So you'll start to see things disappear because the credit availability is where it's at right now. And that's what UBS was really picking up on, was the credit unavailability that's going to rock a lot of these companies, not only the manufacturing on the inbound, whatever raw parts, materials, and service that it could be, but the outbound, and then also the cargo in itself, where they were saying a fair few of these medium-sized shipping companies that are running small inter-Asia vessel routes are going to go, because they're not going to have anybody paying them, and they were staying on, and they probably could have 6 weeks of running costs, and most would be out of business after 6 or 8 weeks. Well, if this lasts any longer than 8 weeks, then these medium routes, or the shipping companies that are running medium supply, that are running, say, from Tianjin down to Hong Kong, or Tianjin down to Singapore, or somewhere around Beijing down to Singapore, and then they transload onto different boats to go across the seas. They're all going to be non-operational. So that supply chain is just, there's several different chains in that to start to think about. And that's what was so fascinating by this UBS report, was that they dissected all the way down into the credit lockup affecting the small inter-regional Asian shipping and logistics system, that then will affect the trans-Pacific or transatlantic routes too, because those little smaller container, there might be a boat that's running 300 containers down to another port that'll load onto, those giant ocean-going vessels that are running 5,000 containers across the ocean. Those 200 to 500 containers aren't going to get there unless they're coming on a smaller, really regional company that will be affected without the credit. And that's what they were delving into, is how many of those were running out of Hong Kong, how many of those were Singapore-based, how many of those were Taiwan-based, how many of those were China-based, that they're all revolving on credit that just won't be there anymore. And that was the whole thing I found,
So
like you said, it's that you can't do the car without that one last piece. And that one last piece might be that super small inter-regional run route that gets 5,000 containers down to a certain port destination, and they're not going to be running anymore.
So that's from the financial aspects and the logistics routes and things like that. That's kind of the macro level. And that's critical, because without the money, none of this is flowing. Without the participation, and that whole thing can just unravel, and putting that back together is a whole other thing. But even if you just look at it from the parts it takes to manufacture an item, or maintenance. When I was in the Army at Fort Bragg during the Iranian hostage crisis, we packed everything up to go over there, but I was really glad that we weren't part of that so-called solution. And that whole solution fell apart, in part due to lack of spare parts. And I might add, that's what they said, spare parts. But sometimes those so-called spare parts is what you're actually using. They're not spare parts. For example, I had an arms ring, and I was in charge of about 200 M16s for a company of 250 people. So we were already short. But it just so happens I only had about 40 functional rifles. Why? Because I couldn't get itty bitty teeny weeny little, a buck for a bucket ejector springs. An M16's got a bolt in it. There's a little pin that pushes on the back of that round when it's ejected out of the chamber, that flips it outside of the chamber, and a little bitty spring in there that runs that pin. And they were not available. I couldn't get them. I had them on order. They wouldn't come in. And there's also that little extractor spring that catches the lip on the back side of the case and pulls it out. I couldn't get those. They were all in great short supply. And they're just little teeny weeny parts that you wouldn't think nothing about. But you know what? That's the kind of stuff we're going to be missing today in our system. Those are the kind of components that we use to build our bigger stuff. And maybe we're buying tons of this stuff from China because they can make it cheap. And we're not going to be getting that stuff for a long time. And it takes a long time to tool up factories to do that here. And will they do it, given the uncertainty? As soon as they spend and invest the money to tool up a factory, boom, here it comes in spades from China. That's a huge risk. Why would you do that? So the production and maintenance of our systems here is going to be in high question. And that's if we don't have anything going wrong in our country. That's if we don't go in any quarantines here. We're going to have challenges with running our entire infrastructure, plus manufacturing. Manufacturing is going to be jobs. Our jobs could start to shut down. People could be at a loss of income. Now, if you factor on top of that, that we may be seeing quarantines here. Look at this. They just put 14 passengers on a jet from the Diamond Princess who had tested positive for COVID-19 on a regular passenger jet. Not a special charter flight like they had told the administration they were going to do. Department of State we'll just put them on regular. We'll just contain them within a section by themselves of a regular passenger jet with unaffected passengers. Yeah, the air recirculates, exactly.
The air never moves on an airplane, huh? It never moves.
No. and they weren't any problems on the Diamond Princess cruise line where they had everybody in their cabins. Nobody was getting infected, right? So everybody's in this one cabin on an airline. Okay, well, they're sitting in the back. Maybe there were some blankets. Oh my gosh, David, the incompetency, and they're taking some of these people and putting them in a FEMA facility in Anniston, Alabama, right below me, not too far. I drove through Anniston last weekend, so I am, but so they're not showing symptoms. Well, what the heck? We know darn well that they shed virus for up to 2, maybe 3 weeks before they actually show symptoms of the disease itself. They're shedding this virus. That's the problem with this virus, is it is actively being shed. And I really worry about the protocol when in places like medical facilities there in China, the medical staff are in full MOT gear, full protective clothing, are getting infected. And yet we got this case where we're being so laissez-faire, bringing these people in and transferring them here and transferring them there. So they're brought into Atlanta, flying to Henry Hartsfield, and then they truck them to Anniston. And then they said, well, if they show signs of the disease, once they start showing symptoms, they'll take them to an appropriate hospital. Where? That's another move. You're moving people around. These people are being serviced by personnel. These personnel may be picking this stuff up and spreading it everywhere. This is how things spread. So I don't have a lot of faith and confidence in the containment that we're doing here in this country. And based on that, based on the fact that they already have 200 people from districts in China that caused them to put them into a volunteer self-quarantine in the Atlanta area, given there's something on the order of 7,500 people in self-quarantine now in California, given that people from this Diamond Cruise Lines and from China are going over in other places in the United States, the students have returned from their to go back to school here, and a lot of people got out of those districts before they started clamping things down, that we have anything near good containment. A lot of people say, well, I've just heard on the news, not I'm talking about how, they were hopeful to be able to catch this and control it. And I'm thinking the cat's already out of the bag. It's already, you have, because of your incompetence, because of your normalcy bias, because you're just not being able to process what you're sitting there in denial, the cognitive dissonance, and being able to accept what's actually going down, you've already put us all at risk. You've already put us at danger. And the best thing that we can do is to take care of ourselves, to have our own, everything we do to keep our immunity up, everything we can do to limit our contact and exposure. But the chances are you're going to get it. So your immunity is the most important thing you can keep up, in my humble opinion, because this stuff it's highly, appears to be, from what we're seeing and hearing, and from the cases on the Princess Cruise Line, appears to be very highly infective. And I've got friends that tell me, Greg, it's just a flu. What are you worried about? Well, it does have a higher fatality rate. It does have other complications. There's a lot of very serious cases that some people say maybe as high as 1 in 5 cases where you might need hospitalization. I'm thinking that if we get to the point, David, where we're filling up the ICUs and there's no beds available, when the medical staff in the hospital starts freaking out, if that's anywhere, if that's 1/10 of the case, if that number is, if the real number is 1/10 of what some of these people are claiming, those beds are going to fill up fast. And this could be happening in a matter of 2 to 4 weeks from now. And at some point, the government is going to start clamping down. They're going to start some kind of quarantines. I don't know how it would go down in the United States, but a lot of people are going to want to self-quarantine. And that would be a smart thing. So things are going to change here real fast. And this is going to further challenge. One, people are going to suddenly discover they need to be stocked up on stuff at home. Even if there isn't an official quarantine, you're going to see supply chain unravel. You're going to see people aren't going to work. Stuff's not going to be on the shelves at the grocery stores. If the real quarantine snap into place, look out. I mean, it's already going to be this way partially just because of the effects of what's coming from China. But as people start getting worried, as they start hearing things about this, and I think this may be why they're trying to control the narrative, is that they're trying to stop this from happening too soon, or stop people from getting prepared, or stopping them from self-quarantine. I don't know really where it's coming from. I'm not saying it's this, it's that, or the other. I'm kicking around conjecture. But in any event, there is the possibility that we're going to see our supply chain significantly unravel here, that people are not going to be able to go to work or not want to go to work, that the supplies on the shelves will disappear. Even if you're trying to produce stuff, you may not have the tools to do it with. Your spare parts. If you're a farmer and you're driving $1 million tractor with with all this the spare parts and software it takes to run those things these days, you're going to have a challenge just keeping that thing running. The diesel trucks that run down the highway require extensive maintenance to maintain, to keep running. And I'm going to worry about the power grid for the same reason. The power grid is a system with lots of parts and pieces, and it requires maintenance. It requires people to be on staff. We produce our power instantaneously as we consume it. That's a very fine-tuned approach to use on the antiquated old system that we have. And it does require also a lot of maintenance to do it. It requires people on the force. I guess somebody just called into my answer machine. I realized I had it plugged up.
That was the power company calling saying, hey, don't give away our secrets.
Yeah. Well, you might hear some helicopters here in a minute.
Yeah, if we do, I'll keep the broadcast going, Greg. No problem.
They'll be coming in.
Yeah, let me hit on one of those points that you said there.
Hey, I got some little blow darts. I might jab them. Jump on top of me.
You need that.
Yeah, my blow gun's upstairs.
See, that dovetails in with that Goldman Sachs report. They were saying that even if everything comes back, it'll take about 7 months, because what you just hit on, once everything is completely depleted, what they were saying is, all right, fine. Now, as the next containers arrive or the next shipments arrive, as soon as they hit that store, it's going to be sold out within seconds as well. So that catch-up period until people start to know there's a more normalized flow, and until those, there might be 200 trucks waiting, and then everything's going to continually be bought out every time it arrives. They said it's going to take about 6-7 months before that thing stabilizes again to nothing there. And as soon as, and they detailed all this, how it was going to move out. So you're looking 6-7 months to a stabilization chain. Again, just one of the things you buy for repair parts. But I've also been tracing down to see how many pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and fertilizers were coming from China for our U.S. agricultural system. Like, a lot of that is not made here in the U.S. An enormous amount of that is from bargain basement beginning product stuff that's from China out of their factories. So how does that hit our agricultural chain as well? Because, almost all of that's used every year. They're not sitting on a mountain of 100 million tons of NPK in the back there. That stuff's made yearly and then consumed yearly.
Just in time.
Just in time. Yeah. So where does that leave us for this season? And what if we do have some sort of, like we saw last year, an enormous amount of rain? So we're going to need more fungicides because everything was really moldy last year. So the amount of fungicides that we needed to put on the crops was 3 times more than in previous years. And what if that breaks down again and we get a heavier, wetter winter? Because you see the Mississippi flooding happening right now. We're getting an enormous amount of flooding down the middle. You're already seeing it down where you're at. It must be pouring. And, here next week is just looking for more inches and inches and inches and inches more rain coming up here on Monday and Tuesday. And it's already waterlogged as it is.
Dry days. I'm just praying, a few dry days. I'm just dying for any kind of break. It's been raining. And I know we've exceeded Noah's allotment here of late. It is so much. So
where's that base constituent going to come? I mean, where's that fungicide and things going to come from? If it's not coming from China, then where do we get it for? Just for our crops in the United States, so we can grow our food without taking significant losses in the fields because we don't have the basic what we need for whatever the situation is on something for that crop condition. Rust. I mean, there's all kind of new fungus and diseases coming out because of more cosmic rays, and we're seeing plants change. Some of they're seeing a lot of strange new kind of. They're calling it super rust, and they had I started in Africa, but suddenly it's everywhere.
We've had that before in Alaska and solar minimum. When you get cosmic ray nucleation causing more cloud cover, then you don't have as much UV coming through. You get more mold. You get more of this stuff floating around and wiping crops out. So you've got the moisture from the late season rains. You got the less UV. It's a perfect environment for mold and to grow like crazy and ruin and destroy crops, to infect them. So we've got the holes in the Swiss cheese are lining up, my friend. And that's why people just need to wake up that food is going to get more scarce. It's going to get a lot more expensive. So right now is the time to get as much as you possibly can. Now, you may not have the money or the wherewithal. If not, then you need to learn the lessons for how to live off the land. I do put I do put out videos on my channel about how to eat wild growing greens, how to eat from pine trees, how to sanitize and purify water. People don't like seeing that stuff. They really don't. I lose subscribers every time I put a video out like that, but I keep putting them out because I know it's important that people are going to really need to know this stuff. And there's other sources that people can go to for this stuff. But you need to know how to grow your own food. You need to know how to grow your own garden. You need to know how to grow indoors, outdoors. I cover indoors, outdoors, aquaponics. I need to do more on that. And eating the wild edibles, because if I bug out, I am not going to be seen or heard. I'm going to disappear. That's my goal, is to be silent, to be the stealth guy who, I'm going to be gone from the radar scope. I'm going to be like Bigfoot. I will be eaten off. There's so many survival shows where the objective is to be rescued. Go to be found, to be rescued. No, not me, my friend.
You want to be out there covered in a wet sheepskin so the radar won't pick you up, or any of the body scan heaters won't. You'll just blend right into the forest. Thermal imaging, there's no Greg. He's invisible.
As much as possible. So that's the kind of objectives to have, is to not be seen, not be heard. That's why I've got this blow dart, by the way. I did a video recently on hunting silently. I've covered and mentioned in many of my topics. So people can look at my videos to see things like that, to see things like the eating the wild winter greens and all the different stuff that grows growing their own food. I try to help people out with that kind of stuff, because I tell people the objective of my channel. I started out just having a homesteading channel, but people found out I'd run 2 power grid defense conferences, and they found out I was a prepper, and so they started asking me about it. So I grew into being a channel that covers prepping and homesteading. There's another channel out there that calls herself a prepsteader. So I guess we're kind of sister channels in that regard. So the thing is that these are crucial skills that we just have to have, and people need to know it. So what I tell people now, that my objective of my channel is to teach people how to survive, thrive, and stay out of the hive. And the hive is, that's what's happening in China. That's what your AI has done to people. And I'm not afraid of a sentient AI. I'm not worried that it's because the AI is going to get smarter than us. I worry about the people, the puppet masters who control the AI. That's the problem you're having in China. It's not the computers. It's the guy behind the curtain. Oh, speaking of
it's the ones programming the parameters in of what's considered a bad citizen.
Speaking of behind the curtain, I have somebody behind the curtain here.
Oh, let's see who it is. Who's our guest today?
Mike. Bloomberg Burger. Yes, he's stealthy here. He snuck in on me. He wanted to.
Oh, well, welcome, Michael.
Hi, Mike.
Mike, you're a billionaire. You don't represent the people.
That's right, Mike. You're trying to take our freedoms. We don't want anything to do with you, Mike. Go home.
I wonder if Mike would know what wild nettles are. That nettles have a high vitamin C source, and would probably walk right by them. You know what I mean?
I'm sure you could find some in the streets of New York, but he probably wouldn't know what to do with them.
Put some Roundup on those things. They're bad. That
would be Mike's approach. Put Roundup on them and make us eat from the factory farms. Take away our liberty and freedom. I did a video on that. I released it this morning on that topic. So I just thought it'd be kind of funny to introduce Mike Limmersburger.
Yeah, these things are coming. So it's not like, you have to sit there and nibble your nails in fear or anything. Just know that these changes are here. Embrace the changes. Know that the energy is changing. Understand that we're moving into different.
I really don't want them to see us, so I'm going to cover them back up. I don't know. I just the wrong side. That's him.
He's been exposed.
Let's cover him back up.
Yeah, but these things are here. You're going to have to embrace it. You just can't resist the change. You have to go downstream with the flow. If you're going to be whitewater rafting, you're going to try to paddle upstream over the boulders up through the whitewater. And no, you just need to go down with it. You should learn from river rafters on how this whole thing's going to work.
Well, it's like karate. Learn how to use the momentum of the system. Learn how to use the minimum of your foe, your opponent, to accomplish the objectives that you want to do. I mean, use the investment of energy they throw in something to take you where you want to go. as much as you can. That is the essence of karate, of all your martial arts taught in the East, for example. And it's, you know, so you can know how to survive, thrive, and thrive, and stay out of the hive if you know how to play those games and pay attention to it. I also tell my people to keep their eyes wide open and head on a swivel, because you don't know what's coming at you, but you also got to be smart to be able to figure out how to assess what it is. And panic serves no one, because if you're panicked, you're not rational. You're going to make stupid decisions, and you're going to run into something. Like back in the days when I used to play Bigfoot and scare the heck out of campers and get shot at, and I would sometimes recruit a friend into those kind of ventures. And one time we were inside of a fence trying to get away from our pursuers, and a bull snorted, and my buddy panicked and ran straight into the fence hard as he could go and made it ring real loud. Ring! Of course, that brought attention to where we were at, and kind of momentarily foiled our deception. And not to mention, it probably hurt him really good to hit that fence so hard. But the panic did not serve him. That was just a funny little example. But panic serves you not. Panic can get you killed. The most important thing is to stay strong, to stay centered, keep a sense of humor, stay strong spiritually and mentally. But you also have to think ahead about the things that can happen, so you're not hit with cognitive dissonance when it comes to you, that you're able to assess it, to understand it, and to know how to go with the flow, know how to go around it, over it, through it, under, whatever you've got to do. You can't do that if you're not mentally prepared. You've got to be able to understand even the crazy stuff that might come. Think about it. Just work through it. Do a brain-mind exercise. A thought experiment, as Einstein would call it. Kind of think through these things and think about how you would deal with them if they should come and happen. And you may have to work with your family and people that are in your community that you prep with on how to do that. And by the way, I do emphasize community level prep, and I do emphasize, and we're going to start working with a lot of my followers and subscribers on developing some tribes. And I've already had a local meeting with somebody here, and working with a family in Northeast Arizona to get some of these things started. So I'm taking this into consideration. I'm trying to do it. But, you know, hey, I'm a busy guy. I have 2 YouTube channels, my other one being Galactic Greg's, which covers space stuff, and a day job, and a worm farm, a market garden, an aquaponics greenhouse. I don't know, I guess too many irons in the fire, itis disease. So, but the key thing is to not panic. The key thing is to keep your head. The key thing is to be able to be aware. You can't be aware if you haven't the eyes to see it, or the ability to understand what's coming at you. And so that requires that you think these things through and be strong physically, mentally, and spiritually. You have to be strong from all centers. Now, some people have no sense of faith in anything outside of the material world. And if that's the way you are, at least understand what's around you. Understand what can happen. Do think it through. Me, I do have a faith in a greater creator, but that's my choice. And you know, people will find solace in different things. I do lead some prayer sessions. Some people find that hard to swallow. Prayer, meditation. It's not any kind of denominational or faith-based toward any particular faith. I leave it open because there's good people in every part of the world. I'm trying to be inclusive to get the power of intention set, like we talked earlier. I do believe we live in a multiverse. I do believe that the universe has many pathways, like that river you're floating down, that it may be controlled by banks. It may go over a waterfall at some point, or maybe it just goes out to sea. But we definitely, if we can control our position in this river, we can keep ourselves from smacking into the rock, regardless of what are the income. You know, different people, different faiths, you know, believe in certain outcomes. And I'm not going to argue with that. But I do put forth a proposition. You can control where you're at in that river as it moves forward. You can control your position in the timeline so that you're better prepared, whatever the final outcome may or may not be. I'm hoping that we can find ways through these meditative sessions to avoid, you know, what hits the fan. But if it does hit the fan, when it hits the fan, which is really looking like it's about to, that we are stronger, that we're able to stand up on the other side, shake it off, and stand up and build a better world. That's my goal. And so I'm doing these meditative sessions. Rex has participated in some of these. We've done some jointly. We've done some separately. You've mentioned this on Rex's show, and I thought that was awesome. So maybe you'd like to join in with us on some of these in the future, and then we all jointly together start promoting this as a way to move the, there are those who believe in the Copenhagen interpretation of the Heisenberg and something, the principle of the dual slit experiment, that you get what you're looking for. I'm not absolutely sure of that, because there's also what they call the pilot theory of physics. But in any event, it does definitely seem that the power of intention can influence the outcome of where you're at. I do believe we have a multiverse. So in my mind, we mentally are selecting which channel, which track of this big matrix of outcomes we go down. And I think if we collectively put our energies into it, that we establish a better outcome for ourselves. That's where I'm coming from.
Vibrate above the chaos.
Bingo. And, whether you're calling in a higher power or trying to get yourself into a better position. And for those that don't believe, I tell them this. I said, look, consider it 2 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever we select at the time, of silence, of silent protest. If we can have people just stopping what they do for a period of time, and if this grows big enough that gets seen, it's going to get some attention. The people that control everything are going to say, no, wait a minute, people are worried about this. People are upset about this. People are doing something. And if they start paying attention to it, that could be a good thing. So whether you want to have any faith or not, this still is an approach, in my opinion, that can be positive. I've had people that didn't have any faith saying, this is not going to accomplish anything. But I don't agree with that. One, I do have faith in a higher, greater creator. But with or without that, you can still accomplish things by silent protest.
Yeah, and also, it's taking a look into the future, because if you've ever been hiking, and I like to go up riverbeds where there's a lot of boulders, because I like to go boulder jumping, and I quite like that kind of hiking. There's about 16 or 20 ways you can move from any one boulder you're on. It's just, you have to look ahead and see which things might be easier to go around, or if you see a block up ahead, you already see it coming, and you go, well, I'm not going to go that direction. It's like looking through this information here and also in a history book. And then, my whole thing is winding this grand solar minimum in with this whole thing happening in China. And because I was saying from the beginning of my channel that about a year out from the actual, I'm not going to say global food shortage where there'll be mass starvation, but I would say to the point where there's going to be less available food, where food prices would double and triple, and that in turn would ripple through governments and cause a lot of instability for the structure of that they were going to start doing something. These elitists or globalists, whatever you like to call them, would start to put policies in to lock people down and, slowly implode the economy, and then limit where you could move on the planet. Because you can't have 100 million people moving to Indonesia because it's going to be a better grow zone, or imagine 500 million people moving to Indo at the same time. Things would go out of flow and be in chaos just from so many people trying to get to better spots.
What a better cover to do something like that than creating something
better, yeah. Because you can't come truly now and tell people that, it is this 400-year cycle in the sun. Sorry, we wasted 20 years of your life feeding you full of CO2 narrative when you could have been preparing and learning things like Greg was talking about here, more self-sufficiency, indoor farming, getting everybody community ready. Oh, sorry, we squandered your time. Can you go back to work today? It's just not going to work like that. So there had to be stories upon stories upon stories. And, the best thing is to look in a history book and see what happened. And then, see what's happening just more close in these last 2 weeks in China, how they're handling. And then there's all these possibilities out in front of you. So how do you think the economy is going to move? And what do you think the new medium of exchange would be? I personally think it's going to be crypto. And what I saw from the paper money being burned, that you can clean coins with Clorox bleach and water. So coins were highly sought after because they can be cleaned. Paper money, not so much. So in China, they're forcing everybody to go to these like cashless tap cards. China never really had coins anyway, but places like Thailand, they do have a lot of coins down there, and people are cleaning them with Clorox bleach. So now you're finding a lot more trade in coins, where people are running out of coins because they don't want the paper now in Thailand. So the coins are becoming actually a premium on the real value of the coin because they can be cleaned daily. So,
Wow,
I
it'd
mean,
be
if you already
nice.
see these little things moving and meshing, and we know in America we have coins, you might think perhaps having a bunch of coins might be a good idea just because it's already happened in two other countries. And,
It's too bad we
maybe it'll
don't have
happen.
silver and gold coins, which carry a lot more value than these cheap fiat coins we're carrying around today.
Hmm.
A quarter is
But in
worth
the
what?
interim,
Bucks?
what if they said everybody adds a zero to the coin? So instead of being a 10-cent piece, it's actually $1 now, and that coin is a coin. It could be anything, right? 50-cent
Yeah,
piece is now $50 or
fiat,
25.
fiat.
Yeah.
But yeah, we could do that. It's totally fiat. But it'd be nice if we had some higher denomination coins. At least Canada's got their loonie, their dollar coin.
Mm.
We've tried it here, but we never quite got it right. And if you put your hand in your pocket, and you can tell a loonie from a quarter because the loonie's got little flat spots around it, which are those gold dollars that we've come up with. Don't have that. It's like, come on, Canadians come
Think
up
about the
with serious.
possibility of just even having that mind experiments to know that it could possibly bend that way, that, hey, it's already happened twice in two other countries. So the possibility of it happening where there's coins available in a country, if it happens in a third country and then a fourth country, it's going to kind of trend that way. And you could set yourself up in advance to have a bunch of coins, and just as simple things. Okay, when people get freaked out about the virus, they're going to go buy an enormous amount of food, and the food's going to really get scarce in a lot of places. All right, that already happens. You already know it's going to happen. Get ready for it. And why would you think it wouldn't happen? It's just like super basic common sense on if something's repeating as a trend, country after country after country, you can't tell me that it's not going to happen. And then the 12th country, right? Oh, it's
Well,
going to be different here because it's the 12th country and it's going to be different here. Yeah, this whole cognitive dissonance thing is just bizarre here.
even if our government doesn't lock us down like they do in China,
Won't
uh,
matter. People are still going to be frightened about, their
yeah,
health and their
keep
hygiene and stuff.
self-quarantine. That self-quarantine
Yeah.
will effectively have a lot of the same effects. And people may start acting out against other people who aren't self-quarantining.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be a community-imposed quarantine. And I wouldn't be surprised to see martial law declared and see very techniques, maybe not like China, because our society is different, but some very draconian, hard pressed quarantine, what we would consider hard pressed. It's hard for me to imagine that people would do here what's going on in China, but I do see things that we would consider extremely draconian. I can see people not having the freedom or liberty to move about and acquire their food. And if they did, the shelves are going to be bare. So I do think people need to be aware, to prepare, to have their supplies. People need to do it now, at least the ones that are listening. Those that have ears, let them hear. Eyes, let them see, because right now you and I are putting it out there. And people with channels like ours, that people need to start getting what they can while they can. And if they can't, you need to learn how to live off the land or something else. And if you're in a big, tall city tower, my friends, it's the worst place to be.
Greg, can I throw a quickie in there? One thing I keep seeing again and again, it happened in China, happened in Thailand, happened in Singapore, it's happening in Taiwan, happened in the Philippines, it's up in Korea, it's in Japan. One thing that seems to keep happening is, like you said, the workforce. They don't want to come into work, especially in areas where there's a larger amounts of people. Could be an office of 50, could be an office of 100. They're having people just not show up at work. So irregardless if they're sick or not sick, what's happening internally, like Japan's not really super affected yet, but what they're being affected by is all these people calling in sick or not coming to work is having I saw this one report where they only had 3 checkout clerks come in for an entire supermarket. Nobody else wanted to come to work. So they had 3 people in there that were going to, like you would go into a checkout counter and that's it. Then what?
I got to
Unless
ask
you're doing the self-checkout thing, and what if those aren't working? And they had 3 people show up in that supermarket, nobody to stock, nobody to restock the shelves, 3 people to come in and take your money. Now, how long does it keep going before that just doesn't work anymore? And they keep finding the same thing. Truck drivers didn't want to go to work. People running trains, the train conductors aren't coming in. Taxi drivers are not coming. Uber drivers stopped. Lyft drivers stopped. Everything stopped. And nobody's really that sick there yet. It's all the fear of getting sick, and the whole thing's like locking up in Japan before anything happens. So you can,
things right
and
to
this,
halt.
and it's like the 7th country this has happened. So again, this cognitive dissonance is like, oh, we would never do the same thing. Oh, come on, really?
It's going to happen because and part of it is because of the incompetence of our system. When you let 14 people from an infected ship who actually are positive, but are not showing symptoms, fly on an aircraft with regular people all the way across the ocean to America, then people are going to start getting suspicious here. They're going to be worried about, and rightfully so, rightfully worried that there could be viral agents, viral particles on surfaces where other people from that airplane had been going through the restrooms, going out to eat, leaving that airport, traveling, handling gas pumps, going in stores, going home, other restaurants, and it starts spreading around. And as they infect people, and as this infection can be growing for 3 weeks before it starts surfacing, people can be spreading this from one to another. And people that are aware of that, and as more people become aware of it, they're going to start going, the system's
Maybe I need to go buy food, and then how many people does it take before an enormous amount of people go by and they're like, wait a second, those truck drivers didn't come in today. Damn.
Well, I'm really asking myself, how long do I want to go to work? What's going to be my cutoff point? When am I going to say, forget it, it's not worth it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking myself that right now. And if I'm asking myself that, so are a lot of other people. And that's going to be the risk. It's too bad that a lot of places that could work from home have it not in their policies to do that. I work in an office on documentation, using stuff on a computer. There's no reason in God's green earth that people like me couldn't work from home, except for the company that I work for as a contractor, and they want to be seen by the customer. And the customer wants to see people. They think, you're not doing anything unless they're looking at you. I ran a virtual company, High Altitude Research Corporation. We launched rockets, and we developed systems for probably far less than 100th the cost of a bigger company, because we worked as a virtual company. We let people work from home. We didn't have all the infrastructure requirements. We didn't have all the overhead. We were able to move faster and accomplish more. Companies like that can actually far outperform companies that work on the old brick and mortar concept. But people they have cognitive dissonance about that. They can't wrap their heads around it. And we're all at risk now because of it. Look how much office space we could save. If you want to get into, how much people can you have and how can you have a more low profile society, let people work from home as much as possible. Do it additive manufacturing at home or in smaller areas. Decentralize the system. Grow more food close in your community. Quit having all this stuff moving around. You will save fuel. You'll save infrastructure. You won't need all the pipelines, all the power lines, all the centralized systems, except centralized systems are great for control, but they're inherently very fragile. By the way,
that's sacrilegious, Greg. How dare you talk about us not having a centralized system and bringing that money into the corporate entities?
Oh, yeah. He's fussing at me over here.
I could hear it in the background over there.
He's all about centralized systems. He's a king, a captain.
It's an existential threat. We need to buy more stuff.
Yeah. Well, I've got him covered up. Need to throw more on him. So
yes, we'll see. We should also see some different kind of corporate, or not corporation, but different kind of industries and whatnot, grow during this time, because, one thing about working at home is a lot of people hit it when they're at their most productive hours, and they can get more done in 4 hours than they could be stuck at an office for 8 when you're tired and you just got to be there and you really don't want to be there.
Going there, coming home, you don't have to dress up. Maybe if you're going to be on a teleconference, you might at least put on a shirt and something. But it's
and all these new opportunities, because things are already spurring off over there in Asia. There's all these new types of companies that are just coming out of nowhere right now to fill the niches of things that are not happening. And it's incredible. New inventions that are coming out too. They have these giant, look like Stargate sprayers where people are coming through, and they got pet masks and all kind of crazy.
Well, every time I started a Power Grid Defense Conference, I gave my attendees great solace and assurance, because I told them, no matter how bad things get, no matter how tough things are, always remember and take solace in the fact that there is a silver lining around every mushroom cloud.
Is there a silver lining on the bottom of every mushroom cap?
Maybe. So the point is that there's opportunity here, that the smart aware, astute person could take advantage of it. It might enable us to develop industries that don't require all this centralized control. It might let us shake off those systems and come up with a more organic, community-based approach to things. A lot of people are against what they think is capitalism, but they got to realize we don't really operate capitalism here in the United States. It's a crony corporatism where the government and is in bed with all the big corporations, and they're working to drive out smaller operations, the mom and pop shops, the small farmers, the small operators, the tradesmen. The bigger companies are just regulating and legislating them out of business. And these are the people that give you the real value. So we need to really reevaluate that. I did talk about that in a video of how government is really run. So people might want to look at that. But going forward, I think we've got some opportunity here. I think we can, especially with our meditative sessions, our prayer sessions, that we can move our world into a better place through the power of intention, the power of prayer. And I also think it also puts ideas in people's heads. As we get people on the same sheet of music, they start seeing possibilities. And I think that is a huge area for impact where we can grow a better society, either in this society to make this world better, or whatever emerges on the other side if it hits the fan after we shake the dust off. And I hope we can prevent that from happening. I hope we can save this world and turn it around. Now, if we've got to worry about solar micronova hitting us, then okay, then we got to do more homework.
You got to find a bigger cave and a deeper cave.
Hey, I do take some solace, my friend. Now, you are from East Tennessee, and as you and I should know one thing. Throughout Appalachia, there are caverns. These caverns have stalactites, stalagmites, and columns that are, because it takes in 12,000 years, you're only going to grow about 4 feet at the rate they grow. And we see these things that are way older than that throughout the caverns in our area. So you and I also probably know, look, I'm a military guy, and I've dealt with space systems. I've got worked with people that work submarines that if you were it don't take a lot of water to create an enormous pressure at 8 pounds per gallon. Don't take a lot of water at all. Water becomes a knife. You can use it to cut steel, my friend. There are water jets that people use to machine with, to cut with. And anybody in a submarine knows that if you get a leak, that you've got a risk of it just cutting through everything. And so these caves could not survive, and the stalactites and stalagmites would not survive if they were hit with the kind of waves that some people are talking about from the Chan Thomas stories. So maybe the wave occurs, but I think if there is a wave, I said maybe, and if there is a wave like that, I would think that it probably hits the Sierra Nevadas, laps up into some of those lakes that we knew of in the West, and spills maybe whatever residuals they are, spills down in the Mississippi River Valley and flows out. Because even at 70 foot above sea level in Florida, there's one of these caverns. The fact these caverns exist tells me the water has not got there. So I think we're safe from that. What we've got here is just a lot of people. Because you can grow a lot of stuff here, and this area land supports a lot of population naturally, which is both a curse and a blessing when you have a lot of people. I mean, you can grow here, we know that. So if you know how to hide here, you've got an advantage.
Yeah, laying low is going to be a key advantage too. Like you say, I think stealth is going to be your friend during these times.
Bug in while you can, especially with all this medical stuff going around. Bugging in is your first best choice, especially for elderly people. Bugging in means you get to keep your medicines and things that you might require for a longer period. But bugging out, you better know how to move tactically as a group or individually in total stealth. But there are ways to do that. If you've got military training, you need to share that with the people you're with, how you move in groups to keep from getting totally wiped out, how you deal with an ambush. These are things that I'm aware of, and just how to be stealthy, what matters, what counts. So all that said, we got a lot coming at us. we've got a lot to be preparing for. I do think that just getting our viewers to know to prepare and to thinking about starting to form communities, and it's something you and I can carry forward and talk. You're not that far from. You're about, 3 hours drive, maybe 4 hours. So you're not that far to fundamentally, we might do some kind of little local meetup down here sometime, somewhere.
Yeah, that'd be good. Now, one thing I keep noticing again, and I encourage everybody to watch these videos that are happening in China, because where they're finding everybody is on the street. Like, the reason they're catching all these people, because they're outside. I understand that you're going to get cooped up in the apartment, but our American homes are much, 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 much larger than any of those kind of little tiny apartments that are in China where people go stir crazy.
And we have a lot more windows. It'd be harder to barricade our homes unless you live in apartments in the city.
Yeah, harder to do that, but it's also more spread out, so it's much more difficult to people to sweep through those neighborhoods. Like, can you imagine, let's say you have, 100 guys. How long would it take to sweep through your state to go through, even if they had them deployed, there's not going to be that many National Guard or military to run around to be able to, even with all the police, they're going to see, like, as soon as things start going south, like, the rule of law is going to be the first thing to go, which we're already seeing over there, vigilantism and break-ins and all kind of crazy robberies, people stealing food and all kind of things happening in China. So, and the police are getting sick and the military is getting sick, and 25% of them abandoned their posts so far. 25% have abandoned their posts over in China.
Well, hey, that was happening in Hurricane Katrina after 3 days, because on that occasion, people were worried about getting home to take care of the family.
Correct.
If you have a power grid outage, that's going to happen. People are going to abandon their posts in droves. And you could get a power grid outage just out of the supply chain unraveling, out of people not showing up for work, out of, that big power outage in the Northeast that was caused by a limb in Ohio that shorted the system out. There was a lot of incompetence in the decision process that caused that cascading failure. When you don't have people at the switch to man things properly, you're going to get a lot more of that kind of thing happening. So there's just so much vulnerability in our system. And I did a video on the fragility of our society. Back in the 1950s, somebody wrote a book called, they wrote a little story called I, Pencil. And I really
never heard of it.
Huh?
Never heard of that one.
It was talking about the complexity of making a number 2 pencil. Why no single person knew how to make a number 2 pencil. That was the case. Why it's really a cast of thousands and thousands. In the 1950s, when society was infinitely more simple than it is today. So I expanded on that. And so I did a video about the fragility of our society. Now, I've got so many videos now. If people want to see my videos and find that, they're going to have to go up and click the video button at the top level of my channel to go down and scroll through and find those kind of things. But that's a very good video. And I also did one talking about the proliferation of technology could lead to weapons of mass destruction type systems. And I talked about how that also puts us very much from how we're going to find ourselves in those kind of predicaments. Why we've got to learn to get along together as a people, or we will not survive society. We have to change the way we think and operate together and how we treat each other. We're just not going to survive. And that was the premise of that. And it was, for some reason, sometimes my appeals to peace have been demonetized because they don't understand what I'm really trying to get at. But anyway, there's this interesting book here, Our Final Hour, written by Sir Martin Rees, Astronomer Royal of Britain, the United Kingdom, that is. He wrote this book in 2003, and he talked about things like, I don't know if you saw the cover, it looks like some kind of viral, or maybe it's an atomic pattern. It does kind of repeat. But he talked about bio-era and bio-terra, and how eras could take us out. And in this day and time when, I was really stunned that we developed in 2 different locations on this planet, in Indonesia and in the Netherlands, a human transmissible bird flu for experimental purposes in a laboratory. Well, we need to understand this. We'll know what to do if there's an outbreak. Well, gentlemen, you just created a pathway of accidental release for an outbreak. That's nuts. You shouldn't be doing stuff like it on planet Earth. This is why we need a space program. If you want to do this kind of experiments, take it to the moon or somewhere what's not in our biosphere. And if you get infected, you stay there. Don't be bringing all these.
That satellite comes crashing down, oops, and then it crashes onto the pavement and splatters everywhere.
That's why I say put it on the moon, because the moon is slowly moving away from Earth.
Yeah. Right.
It's not going to, if the moon comes crashing down, my friends, you got bigger things to worry about.
Yeah, those tides are going to get big.
That is the end of the cockroaches as we know it. So, anyway.
Hey, you got coronavirus. I heard you coughing. Hey, I'm going to put you under quarantine. It's as simple as that. You know, they can just hear you cough and then grab you and pull you aside if you're on the street. So, you know, this again, look what's happening in China. They hear you cough on the street, you would have been taken away absolutely right then, instantly. They would have grabbed you just for that cough. No kidding. And see, learn those things. Get off the streets. Stay out of the way. Stay silent. Stay invisible.
Well, cough is not uncommon to me in this time of the year in this area. When I lived in Alaska, I never had a sniffle or a cough. It's the only time in my life I never had anything like that. I loved Alaska for that reason. I took to Alaska like a fish to water because I have a Nordic body type. I have a lot of Nordic ancestry, so I had a hard time readapting to Alabama, the state I was born in.
Hot and humid. No polar bears down there.
I actually got heat exhaustion driving through the town I was born in with the windows down in my pickup truck. The first summer I was back in Alaska. I mean, I was sick. I was like a limp noodle. I was doing nothing. I've readapted to the heat now, but it took some time. So, you know, I adapted to Alaska like a fish to water. Coming back home nearly killed me.
Did you adapt to no polar bears down there?
Well, brown bears, Alaskan brown bear, it was a big thing where I was at. I was stationed at Fort Greely, just north of Mount Hayes, Mount Deborah, and that's an interesting place to be, just north of the Alaska Range. I was in a unit called the Cold Regions Test Center. We didn't have polar bears in that area, but they weren't that far away. Brown bears. The brown bear is a huge bear. It's the kind of bear that if you're out in the woods and it comes up and stands over you, you just kneel down and bless yourself to the nourishment of its body. You just say just blessing for it.
Shall be good to put use.
And you look up and you see this bear, it's like, uh-oh. Too late.
Gonna make a nice coat out of you.
Yeah. Well, you know, you can't use the little pea shooters people hunt with down here. I guess a game like that, you've got to have some serious 44 caliber Magnum. You got to have some serious firepower to deal with an animal like that, or some really good spray or something. The best thing is not getting that position in the first place. You know, make noise going through the woods up there, so that you scare away the bear. Unless it don't want to be scared away. A mama bear is a different matter. So hopefully you scare the cubs away. Oh, well, we've covered a lot of ground. We've all over the map. So this is very interesting talk. Gosh, we've got so much we can talk about, David. I'm glad you're back here safe in the United States. You know, I was worried about you over there because I knew you were over there. And I thought, wow, what's David dealing with? But I also knew that you knew a lot of stuff, that you were finding out things. So I've been highly curious for some time about that. So we'll have a lot to talk about in the future. I hope we can do more of these sessions. We have very similar goals, little different sets of expertise to get there, and that's what you need. You need that kind of resiliency in the community to move forward to accomplish what we need to accomplish. So I'm just glad to know you, and I'm really honored to have you here today on my channel. And I really admire what you do, the work you do, mainly because it takes a lot of heart to do what you do. It takes commitment. You have to care to do what you do. There's better, easier ways to make a living than what you have chosen. I know that you choose this because it's what you believe, it's what you feel. And in my humble opinion, that makes you a hero.
Damn, you a hero too. I'm learning from you about trying to get small game for animal proteins. You know, that's something I'd never thought about. That was never on my radar until we met up at LeakCon and you were talking about that. And I thought, light bulb goes off. Right. You know, self-sufficiency, but what about those animals that you're going to have? They're going to need protein as well, but you know, insect sources for that, or worms or whatever. And then again, the casings for the fertilizer, and you got this whole chain of things that are usable of, you know, and every time I see an earthworm now, I'm very thankful. Oh, it's right there, you know, for us.
And I sell earthworms for people to know. I will have links below about that too.
Yeah, and really, it's like a whole different. And it's like blending these worlds together, because I have my little segment that I'm doing here, and like when I
You're
talk about the
developing
grand single
growing.
minimum, it's more about the self-sufficiency of it all
Yeah,
anyway, and breaking away from this whole control system.
bingo. That's what we're both all about. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of room to collaborate. I've got a concept, David, for a home you can live out of and make a living out of. It's based on their DeVace family backyard on basically your roof for half of it and part of a lawn, a whole home footprint of 1/10 of an acre. It's kind of like an Earthship on mega steroids. And then, it would be a habitat home that you could live in anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
even on the moon or Mars, if properly designed. And I have concepts for that. So it would be an awesome approach that you could grow your food in, make a living out of. You could basically build it out of the building materials where you build it right there. I mean, on site, what's there? It would have almost no carbon footprint. Now, I don't choose that because I'm worried about carbon. It's just a sensible way to build. And it just so happens for those that are worried and telling me we have too many people on Earth, how much land area, David, do you think it would take to accommodate 9 billion people at a density required by the DeVace family of 4 people per 1/10 of an acre? How much land area do you think that would take for 9 billion people? Because 9 billion people at one time was what the UN was projected our global population would top out at. So what do you think that would require? Produce almost everything you need out of homes like this. If you had these homes established, what do you think it would take?
We'd have to deconstruct the system that we're working with right now and get people out of cities,
Oh yeah.
and maybe turn those cities and the buildings into grow areas, and then people could feed off the periphery of that being a main grow center if we'd ever did everything indoor. We're talking about completely restructuring, but just in terms of land, 9 billion times 1/10 of it. Even let's be generous and give them 2/10. So let's give each person 1/5 of an acre. What do you think?
You still got plenty of room. If it's at 1/10 of an acre, the answer is an area the size of Texas and New Mexico, or
Oh, that's right. That's all right. You're ever going to put it like that? Yeah, the entire Earth's population, just like that.
Yeah, the projected future population in the area size of Texas and New Mexico, or half of Alaska. So
again, it's about the distribution of the resources. It's not about there's a scarcity. It's the way the system's been set up to force you onto this centralized system. That's the Achilles heel there.
Exactly. We don't need it. We don't need it at all. We don't need any of it. In fact, you can live just as comfortable, just as prosperous, probably better in a system like this. So it's just a matter of, there's a little bit of engineering to get it all down pat. I want to develop one of these homes and start this. This is one of my goals. But I think we could do so much with this kind of approach. Yeah, it would start redoing, retooling your cities and your homes. And so it's an evolutionary process. And I would never advocate putting all the people in one place. That's nuts. But that's just a thought exercise. What does it take? Because there's so many people. Because, oh my gosh, we got too many people. I hear that so much. And, this guy back here, he's got that kind of philosophy, I'm sure. But
I do believe in some centralized systems where, like, for example, iron production.
Oh, yeah.
Learning from Mao's Great Leap Forward, or actually the Great Leap Backward, where they had these things called backyard furnaces, where they were trying to get people to burn their furniture out of their home to create enough heat to create steel in their backyards, versus having it done at a centralized factory where you could do better quality control and have anthracite cold and like get the proper heat, versus somebody burning their furniture to try to make, and most of it cracked anyway, and it was all junk, but it was just, again, it was a control mechanism.
Internet is going to require, and the kind of communications we're going to want for people to be able to work at home and have additive manufacturing. You're going to have infrastructure still. You're going to have
there's got to be some infrastructure. You'd be deluding yourself if you think we could just all live kumbaya somewhere out in the countryside.
Adam Smith's pen factory analogy is still a valid analogy, that having people that specialize in things is of great value. So, the Henry Ford manufacturing processes of assembly lines and things like that, those are all still valid truths. I don't see it going away. And you will still have some large farms. You would still have a lot of these things. But what I'm saying, we would take a lot of pressure off of those systems. you would still want a lot of that stuff, but you won't have the requirement for it that you have today, and that it would shift things, and we could have a far more resilient, far more beautiful society if we move away from a lot of that into this different mode of living. And we will have plenty of resources. We could just mine the derelicts of our previous society for the most part, and we'll need still some of those rare earth minerals and some things like that. But they're in great abundance in asteroids, my friend.
Space mining, yeah, that's the next thing to move forward with.
Yeah, so just ask my buddy Galactic Greggs. I'll probably cover that in a future video. So we've gone on for a long time now. I think we've gone past what we wanted to cover initially time-wise, but this is our first engagement. Maybe by throwing Bloomer's Burgers in here and a little bit out of my entertainment, we can keep some of our people on board. But David, I really appreciate it. My hat's definitely off to you.
Okay, and as a matter of fact, somebody who's living in China is trying to call me right now. Wow. One of my contacts in China is actually trying to call in here. He must be using a VPN because he's got a Skype call coming in. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, those of you out there, just a quick FYI, I've been back for about 3 weeks now and been self-quarantining as well, just because, coming back, totally fine. Just taking care of myself, making sure everything's fine. And yeah, feel good. It's just not like I didn't arrive yesterday and you're all like, oh, he's back. He's from yesterday. No, I've been here since the beginning of the month. And
Taiwan had no,
yeah,
going back and forth with China.
Because the Chinese tourists were forbidden from coming to Taiwan because of the political spat. So all tour groups and all individual travelers were forbidden from going there. So during the whole Chinese New Year, there were none that even arrived on the island, which saved everything because nobody was allowed to go there. So that was kind of an island on an island of respite from the infections themselves. But then once all the Taiwanese who had ancestral roots over in China went over and came back.
Yeah, so
they went over to China for Chinese New Year, and then when they came back as Taiwanese citizens, that's when you started to see a lot of stuff take off.
You got 26 cases in Taiwan now. The U.S. is now showing 35, but these numbers are bogus, really.
They're bogus. I mean, look at what he got: 7,200 people hanging out somewhere in California. And
and the CDC distributed test kits. Now they're saying on the 3 states got test kits that actually work
at 500 a day or something, please.
Yeah. And they're only testing people that both came from China or showing symptoms. So you almost have to come from Wuhan or be showing symptoms to even get tested. So they're not detecting any community-to-community transfers of this. And they go out and say, well, there's no community-to-community transmission of this disease. Well, you're not going to see it because you're absolutely not testing for it. Duh.
Yeah, when you start seeing cases popping up in like Piedmont, Alabama, or Lexington, Kentucky, or somewhere in the middle of Idaho where nobody's ever been, then you know that when these things just rise organically out of nowhere, you're going to be like, where did all this come from? And then the game on.
They're not tested yet. So I'm going to tell you, my friend, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that something's missing here.
But I'll play one on TV.
Exactly.
All right, Greg, I'm going to sign off because I want to get this call from China. I want to see what Bill's got to tell me here. I'm curious because he's got some info on the inside there. He's hanging out in Guangzhou area. So
awesome. Well, hey, I would love to hear about it. So thank you so much, and let's do it again and not wait for too long.
All right, thanks. Yeah, and if anybody else wants to check out some more of my work on the grand solar minimum and tying this virus in together, Adapt 2030 channel on YouTube or Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast, available anywhere podcasts are hosted across the net. Lisbon, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, wherever you like to find it.
Check out Adapt 2030 and subscribe. All of the guys.
Subscribe. Click that button. Thank you for the help, and I will see you later, Greg. Talk to you.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye.